Hello, I'm Nicholas Mackey, and I'm going to tell you about Auschwitz concentration camp. Auschwitz concentration camp is the largest of the Nazi death camps. 1.1 million people were murdered, mostly Jewish population. Auschwitz has become a symbol of death, the Holocaust, and the destruction of European Jewry. Auschwitz was one of the 5 death camps constructed by the Nazis, was the most streamlined mass killing center ever created. On April 27, 1940, Heinrich Himmler ordered the construction of a new camp near Auschwitz, Poland. The Auschwitz concentration camp quickly became the largest Nazi concentration and death camp. By the time of its liberation, Auschwitz had grown to include 3 large camps and 45 subcamps. Jews, gypsies, homosexuals, asocials, criminals, and prisoners of war were gathered, stuffed into cattle cars, on trains, and sent to Auschwitz. When the train stopped at Auschwitz, the newly arrived were told to leave all their belongings on board and were then forced to disembark from the train and gather upon the railway platform known as the ramp. The people who were sent to the left, which was the majority of those who arrived at Auschwitz, were never told that they had been chosen to death. The entire mass murder system deepened on keeping this secret from its victims. If the victims had known they were headed to death, they would most definitely have fought back. Those that had been sent to the right during the selection on the ramp process went through a dehumanizing process that turned into camp prisoners. All their clothes and any remaining personal belongings were taken from them, and their hair was shorn completely off. They were given stripped prisoners, outfits, and a pair of shoes, all of which were usually the wrong size. They were then registered, had their arms tattooed with a number, and transferred to one of the Auschwitz camps for forced labor. The new arrivals were thrown into the cruel, hard, unfair, horrific world of camp life. Within their first week at Auschwitz, most new prisoners had discovered their fate for their loved ones that had been sent to the left. Remember, being sent to the left means you were heading towards the deathbed. Some of the new prisoners have recovered from this news. In the barracks, prisoners slept cramped together with 3 prisoners per wooden bunk. Toilets in the barracks consisted of a bucket, which had usually overflowed by morning. In the morning, all prisoners would be assembled outside for roll call. Standing outside for hours at roll call, whether in intense heat or below freezing temperatures, was itself a torture. After the roll call, the prisoners would be marched to the place where they were to work for the day. While some prisoners worked inside factories, others worked outside doing hard labor. After hours of hard work, the prisoners would be marched back to camp for another roll call. Food was scarce and usually consisted of a bowl of soup and some bread. The limited amount of food and extremely hard labor was initially meant to work and starve the prisoners to death. Such a unhumane and brutal way to treat people. Also on the ramp, Nazi doctors would search among the new arrivals for anyone they might want to experiment upon. Their favorite choice were twins and dwarves, but also anyone who in any way looked physically unique such as having different colored eyes, would be pulled from the line for an experiment. During the liberation of Auschwitz, when the Nazis realized the Russians were successfully pushing their way toward Germany in late 1944, they decided to start destroying evidence at Auschwitz. Himmler ordered the destruction of the crematory, and the human ashes were buried in huge pits and covered with grass. Many of the warehouses were emptied, with their contents shipped back to Germany. In the middle of January 1945, the Nazis removed the last 58,000 prisoners from Auschwitz and sent them on death marches. The Nazis planned on marching these exhausted prisoners all the way to the camps closer or within Germany. On January 27, 1945, the Russians reached Auschwitz. When the Russians entered the camp, they found the 7,650 prisoners who had been left behind. The camp was liberated. These prisoners were now free. These prisoners were left back simply because they were either sick or too weak to continue the journey. Auschwitz was known for being the largest concentration camp in the Nazi Party. From May 1940 to January 27, 1945, when Auschwitz got liberated, 1.1 million people were murdered in that concentration camp. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope you learned something about Auschwitz concentration camp. Thank you.